So, Michael, thanks for taking the time this morning. I'm very interested to hear you tell the story about Bristol City and your journey to Microsoft Intune. So, perhaps start and tell us a little bit about yourself and then a little bit about the school.
Yeah, well, I'm systems administrator for Bristol City Schools. We've got about 4,200 students, 7 schools, and I've been here. This is my 22nd year.
Wow.
So yeah, we started out with virtually nothing and built up to where we are now. Every student has a device. It's one-to-one.
Yeah.
A mixture of Chromebooks in the lower grades and Windows in the high school and middle school. And managing those devices for the past quite a few years was SCCM, which we used to roll out updates and image them as well. And we always had some difficulty with SCCM. One of the primary was students off-site and staff off-site. It was very unreliable in getting them updates and software packages.
Did you have the cloud management gateway?
We did. But
it's still problematic.
Yeah, we always were encountering problems, typically around the time we had to do updates to the SCCM server itself. That gateway would always die on us, and updates were very, very unreliable with it, to the point that we pretty much just relied on them being on our network for updates.
Yeah, and you were talking about life before the pandemic, I guess.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Right. So it probably got a whole lot worse then.
But at the same time, we always preferred, we wanted them to be able to update their computers at home so that we could reduce traffic on our network during business hours.
Okay. But it just wasn't a reliable process. And so you
definitely
really come
wasn't.
Into the school, get on the network.
It pretty much got down to the point where we're using it to re-image the computers once a year and no updates were rolling out.
Wow. So you would bring back all the machines at the end of the academic year, re-image them all. But in between those events, there was no updates happening on the machines.
No.
Wow. So you had a very clear risk profile then for the rest of the year.
Absolutely.
That's interesting. And there was obviously a lot of work to bring in those machines, do all that logistics, do all the imaging.
Yeah, it was havoc all summer long. It was all hands on deck to re-image machines.
Wow.
And of course, we had to create master images for them and make sure all the software that was installed was up to date before we could roll it out to machines each year.
Yeah, and just maintaining those images, that was probably a lot of work.
It was. That's my job, and it took up a fair amount of time.
Wow. Okay. So your challenges then were manually imaging the machines, doing your OS updates, and I guess your application packaging as well, packaging and patching.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And some of that we ended up having to do via, Active Directory as well, just send out packages being that, because SCCM wasn't always as reliable as group policy for installing some packages.
Okay. And you were using on-prem AD at the time?
Yes.
Okay. So when did you start the journey then of exploring Intune as an alternative?
We started exploring it well over a year ago. I think it was a couple of years ago. I believe our former technology director was
Andy.
Andy was talking to one of his folks in Tennessee, and they were thinking about implementing it because they were having similar issues as us with SCCM, and Andy wanted me to explore it, and it looked like a complete game changer for us if we were able to implement it. And we already had the licensing we needed through Microsoft through the campus agreement. So it really made sense to at least put in a test of it.
Yeah. Okay, so you had the A3 licenses. You were fully licensed from Microsoft Endpoint Manager. So tell us a little bit about the process then of going ahead and testing it and seeing if it could do the things you wanted it to do.
I did some searching on YouTube and Microsoft and got together just a very basic setup to just play with some of the features of Intune. And it was quite a complicated process. It would have taken up a ton of my time to get it implemented, knowing virtually nothing about it to start with. And so Andy had reached out to you folks to see what help you might be able to give us with that. And from that point, it was pretty much just let you know what we want, set up a few accounts, and it was on automatic from there.
Great. So now you got Intune up and running. Tell us how life is different when it comes to those three big areas you touched on before: imaging, OS updates, and patching.
It's changed absolutely everything. We're finally where we really wanted to be. Intune allows us to fresh start a computer or Intune, reset the computer whenever we want to. So with new school years coming in and computers change hands, we can just reset them, not even have to think about it. They just reset. Once they're done, they're waiting for the new user to log in, throw them on the shelf until they're assigned to the new user. Updates, we have them set just like I wanted to with SCCM, so that updates start after the school day when they're at home on their own network.
Okay, yeah.
And that cleans up our network,
keeps the traffic off your
absolutely. Mm-hmm. And I mean, setting up computers now is absolutely effortless because we currently purchase our PCs from Dell, and they enroll them in Intune before they even hit our hands. Yeah. So we can actually hand a sealed box to a user. They throw them on any network, regardless of whether it's ours or any other network, sign into it, and their computer's set up after about 30 minutes with all the apps that we deploy to them. And apps is another thing altogether. It's really made distributing apps incredibly effortless. The one tiny step that's different from SCCM with putting an app into Intune is running the little Intune app utility, which takes about 10 seconds before you upload it into Intune to create the Intune package. And I mean, it is absolutely effortless to deploy apps in Intune. It's made all the difference in the world.
That's awesome. That's so good to hear. And are you using the company portal to give students the option of selecting specific apps they might need, or are you just pushing out a portfolio of apps?
Absolutely. That's a critical part of it, because we don't want to have to bog down their computers with every app and take up extra bandwidth space to put everything that we have available on their computer. So all students have the Intune portal or company portal, and they can go select what they want and install it on their computer when needed.
That's great. And then those apps receive updates over the air silently.
Yep.
Wow.
Sure.
That's awesome. You're living the dream, Michael.
I am. And another thing I have to say is, keeping track of computers now is so much incredibly easier for us. If we've got a laptop that goes missing, we can just jump in. Now that we're in Azure, along with Intune, we can just jump in and see where that computer signed in from, IP address, geolocation, any of that, and then go into Intune. If we're satisfied that it's lost, we can go lock it down or wipe it and make it pretty much unusable to anybody who might not supposed to have it.
Yeah. So that autopilot capability sounds like that's been a real game changer for you.
It has,
Provisioning and
absolutely.
inventory management.
I can't imagine going back.
Yeah. And have you integrated OneDrive with Intune? Are you pushing out content to your devices?
Absolutely. For all students, yes.
Okay, so they get specific folders and files.
Well, we haven't sent folders, but yes, we have sent some files out, and a little bit of testing right now. We haven't really implemented it too much. We eventually want to be able to allow teachers to specify what they want to send to students.
Okay, great. So the teacher would choose specific folders and files, and then they would get automatically distributed to their students. Fantastic. And tell me a little bit about the identity journey. You were on AD on-prem. I presume you're now at least syncing one way, if not two ways, to Azure AD?
We're hybrid, two-way sync.
Okay.
And so that now, that's another thing. Now users can reset their password in the cloud since it syncs back to our local AD. Yeah. And we're actually pretty darn close to the point that we could end local AD. I'm not in a rush to do that yet because there are still some computers and servers that use AD, of course. And so I don't see AD locally going away at any point in the near future, but the students and staff pretty much rely on AD in the cloud, Azure.
That's great. And self-service password reset, which is very elegant.
Yeah.
And you're using MFA?
No. Our administrators decided not to use MFA at this point. At least for the younger students. They're considering it for the high school age students, but right now we're kind of holding back on that. That is something we're looking at in the future, though.
We probably don't want to be encouraging the very young ones to get cell phones earlier than they might have already wanted them. Yeah, I totally get that. So
now, it is enabled, so we're not forcing it, but if a student wants to sign up with MFA, we allow them to.
Well, that's pretty empowering.
And that's part of the signing up for the password portal.
Yeah, that's great. So the kids transition then from the G Suite world when they go from elementary into middle school. They transition from the Google world into the Microsoft world. They've got a Windows machine. They've got Office applications. What's that experience like? What are your observations of that transition for the students?
It hasn't been much of any transition at all because the students on Chromebooks, we use ClassLink, which presents them a desktop of apps. And one of the tabs that opens right away is Office 365. So the students are using, even the Chromebook students are using Office 365 fully. We allow them to use Google, but since our mail domain is in Office 365 and, Microsoft Schools and the school data sync, we're pretty much just using Google to manage our Chromebooks and not a whole lot more.
Gotcha. And now that you've got Intune fully working, which is awesome, what's next for you? What are the things that you're researching or you're keen to test, or where do you want to go next with that modern endpoint management capability?
Wow. Honestly, I haven't thought too much about it. It's been a busy school year right now, and we're just so pleased with how it's going right now that I don't really want to change too much in the near future, aside from some local resources. We're going to upgrade some equipment. That's what we're focusing on right now, upgrading equipment within the district.
Yeah, but it's good to hear that it's working so well. You don't have any burning needs to change it.
No.
That's really good.
After so many years of struggling with SCCM, it's kind of a relief just, to sit back and not feel like I absolutely have to log in to check what's going on a number of times a day. I know it's just going to be working.
Yeah. What would you say is the impact on the workload for you in IT going from SCCM to Intune?
Oh, massively less. There is no, or almost no manual imaging anymore, unless we have a computer software is so corrupted we need to just flash an image onto it, and that image is just the OEM Windows image. It's not something I have to sit there and build.
Yeah.
Because once we flash it, and the laptop is already enrolled in Intune, so when it comes up and the user signs in, boom, their apps start installing automatically, and they're ready to go.
Fantastic. How was the experience working with the team at Mobile Mentor, setting up the Intune environment?
It was effortless. Honestly, it was pretty much hands off, until the very end when everything was set up and I received some training regarding it.
Okay, so the team took care of
everything, and any requests that I had, they implemented into it, and it was turnkey. There was really any questions that I had after the install or the implementation was done were simply because I wasn't familiar with a particular function, because barely used Intune before, and they were very quick to answer that, and that's honestly all I can say about it. It was just an effortless implementation.
That's great. Michael, any final words of advice to other system administrators or IT directors in schools who are thinking about going with Intune, who are kind of at the evaluation phase where you were maybe a year and a half ago? What would you say to them?
I'd have to say, based on my experience, it's just been a game changer for us. I know there are other MDMs out there, but if you're like us and you have the licensing from Microsoft, everything's integrated and it just works.